The year is 1982, and the Cold War is in full swing. The world hangs in the balance as the two juggernauts of communism and capitalism stare each other down over world domination. Conflicts rage across the Middle East, with Iraq's invasion of Iran entering its second year, and the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan angering the local populace, who now fight a brutal guerrilla war with the superpower. The West, on the other hand, is experiencing a new wave of cultural and economic prosperity. All nations except the UK, which has fallen into a deep recession and a rise of anger and discontent directed towards their Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, over her mismanagement of the country and its economy. On the other side of the world, Argentina was in the middle of its so-called dirty war, with the populace rioting and protesting against the rule of a military junta which took power by force only a few years ago. This junta took power from the previous democratic government, with help from the American CIA, in order to create a strong bulwark against communism in South America and expand their spheres of influence. It had managed the country terribly, with deep economic and cultural recessions, causing the people to rise up in anger and force against this new, rather dystopian regime. The leader of the junta, General Leopold Galtieri, was desperately trying to regain control of his populace and country. Soon his advisors informed him about the possibilities of capturing the so-called Falkland Islands. The Falkland Islands are an archipelago of two large islands and several smaller ones in the South Atlantic Ocean. They are owned by the United Kingdom, but have been claimed by Argentina ever since they declared their independence from Spain in the early 1800s. Galtieri realised that retaking the islands would unite the country and inspire the populace to work together in order to solve the country's issues, rather than working against it. So it was decided. The Falkland Islands were to be invaded and taken by force by the Argentine Navy, Air and Ground Forces. The plans went into motion on the 2nd of April, with elite Argentine Marine and Ranger forces landing on key points of the island, quickly overwhelming the small force of Royal Marines and taking the islands. No declaration of war was handed to the British, making this an illegal act of aggression. Argentine forces occupied South Georgia Island as well on the 3rd. The news of the capitulation of the Falklands was met with cheering crowds in Argentina, and Galtieri proclaimed a total victory over British forces. The British government held a crisis meeting on the same day of the invasion, in which they debated on what the best way to retake the islands were, diplomatically or by force, although some advocated that the islands should just be handed to the Argentines outright, as they contained nothing of value to the United Kingdom. This was quickly dismissed by Margaret Thatcher, who believed it was her duty to protect the British citizens on the islands from the Argentine fascist thugs. So, it was decided. The islands were to be retaken, and a Royal Navy task force began to form on the 4th of April, with several civilian ocean liners and freighters being commandeered to help transport troops and equipment on the long journey to the islands. A war cabinet was formed on the 6th of April, and a total exclusion zone was placed around the islands on the 30th of April. The task force contained several advanced Royal Navy vessels, including 2 aircraft carriers with a total of 44 Harrier jump jets, 7 modern Type 42 destroyers, and 7 Type 21 frigates, as well as 2 Churchill-class nuclear attack submarines which dashed straight to the island to patrol the area. The other ships proceeded to Ascension Island, which was roughly halfway to the Falklands. Ascension would become the staging area for the entire task force due to its RAF and Royal Navy facilities. 2 days after the invasion, the United Nations passed UN Security Council Resolution 502 at the request of the British government. The resolution stated that Argentine troops should leave the islands immediately, and that the two should seek to solve their issues through diplomatic debate and discussion. The resolution was Britain's first and final attempt to retake the islands diplomatically, and was met with complete silence from the Argentine government and their UN officials. Now it was final. The British were to retake the islands by force. A small force of the task force sailed to retake South Georgia Island and managed to do so with little resistance. An Argentine submarine was also sunk while en route to the island. The main task force arrived in the Falklands in early May and was immediately met by an Argentine air raid, with 36 aircraft attacking the fleet. However, the raid caused little damage to the fleet and several Argentine jets were shot. The task force's first task was to gain naval supremacy of the waters surrounding the islands. This was easily accomplished on the 2nd of May, with the British submarine HMS Conqueror torpedoing the Argentine cruiser, the General Belgrano, sinking her in mere minutes, causing over 300 Argentine sailors to freeze and drown in the icy waters. The sinking of the ship was extremely controversial, as it was sunk outside of the British exclusion zone, and therefore many considered it an illegal act of war by the British. However, the sinking drastically shifted the Royal Navy's position in the Falklands, with the rest of the Argentine Navy retreating to port for the remainder of the conflict due to fears of another Royal Navy attack. However, disaster struck the British only 2 days after the sinking of the Belgrano, with Argentine aircraft striking the British Type 42 destroyer HMS Sheffield with an advanced Exocet missile, crippling and later sinking her. The Argentine jets escaped unmolested, and 20 Royal Navy sailors died due to the missile's impact. This was a severe shock to both the British public and the Royal Navy, which was now forced to constantly be on the lookout for these deadly missiles. Now that the Royal Navy had achieved naval supremacy, they began to prepare themselves for the final invasion and subsequent retaking of the Falkland Islands themselves. SAS and SBS commandos raided key bases and strongpoints on the surrounding islands in order to demoralize and soften the Argentine troops and their defenses. British forces finally landed on the 21st of May, near Port San Carlos, and was met by little resistance from Argentine forces. However, the landing fleet was bombed heavily by the Argentine Air Force, sinking a frigate and heavily damaging several other landing ships. British reinforcements arrived the next day, and they began preparations to attack the town of Goose Green. Goose Green is a small town situated on the narrow crossing between the main half of East Falkland and the Lafonia region to the south. Therefore, it was key to secure the town in order to liberate the southern half of the island. A bloody battle was fought on the 28th of May, but British forces managed to overpower the Argentines and secure the town. This was a key victory in the campaign and secured the entire southern half of the island. Stanley was surrounded by the sea to the east and several large hills and mountains to the west. These hills would need to be secured before Stanley could be liberated. The assaults on several hills commenced in unison on the 11th of June, with heavy resistance during the assault, but with air and naval support, the peaks were secured within the same day. After the peaks were secured by the British forces, Stanley was effectively surrounded, and the Argentine defenders lost all hope of victory, surrendering Stanley on the 14th of June, effectively ending the Falklands War. The news of victory was met with joy in the UK, with the populace celebrating their rapid retaking of the islands. This could not be said, however, about the Argentine response, with the populace being even more angry than before, resuming the riots and protests and overthrowing the junta in the following year, and replacing it with the previous democratic government. Margaret Thatcher was hailed as a hero by the British people, and she won a landslide victory in the 1983 election, mainly due to her victory at the Falklands. However, the war's legality and the leader's ethics are still contested to this day, with many claiming that Margaret Thatcher didn't care about the islands or her citizens, and only went to war to secure her election win, needlessly slaughtering hundreds of British and Argentine soldiers to accomplish her goals. It is also claimed that the sinking of the Belgrano was a war crime, and those which ordered and carried out the order should be tried and punished. However, this carries little support in the modern day. On the other hand, people say that Argentina was a fascist dictatorship, which only wanted to conquer lands, and letting them take the Falklands would have been the equivalent to Nazi appeasement, allowing Argentina to have a free hand in South America. Argentina still lays claim to the islands to this day for the same reasons, and often threatens to retake the islands in order to intimidate the British and other South American nations. However, it is unlikely that any of these threats hold any weight, as in the near future it would be simply impossible and disastrous for the Argentines to take the islands, as there is a now large British defence force stationed on the islands to defend the citizens and newly discovered oil and gas reserves, which the UK and Argentina now extract together. So, overall, it would be far better for Argentina to stay out of the islands, as they have far more to gain by cooperating with the British than going against them. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.